Hello everybody and welcome to this special YouTube video all about the Jupiter-Saturn square that was exact the weekend just gone. So it was exact on the 15th of June 2025 and I'm recording this on the 16th of June 2025. Welcome to my Jungle Book background. I am not sponsored by Disney or anybody else that can hand paint murals. That I did not paint this one, but I do love it in the background. But I do feel like I have to sort of sit here just because the frame otherwise wouldn't be right, and also because there's loads of stuff on the top of the wardrobe over here that I don't want you to see anyway, including lots of dust. So yeah, anyway, we're going to talk about astrology and that is why we're here, but I had to mention the mural because it's funny. So yeah, exciting, challenging, restriction, expansion, all taking place within this particular transit. And the idea of making a video like this is to try and help empower you to look into your own astrology chart. If you're finding that tricky, you can always book in for a one-to-one with me at freyastrology.com. I have got spaces for one-to-one readings. Every week there's usually some space available, so have a look at the availability on the website. There's also mini readings on there if you just want to kind of try one out, but a one-to-one reading is about an hour long. We can talk about life, family, work, career, kids, relationships, parents, whatever it is that you want to talk about. We can look for timings of things as well, like is it a good time to take a new job? Is it a good, is this school going to be the right school for my kid? Just all these, various questions that might come up, just to give you a rough idea about what you can actually use an astrology reading for. I'm just going to dust some of the dust off of my laptop. Anyway, back to today's video. So the Jupiter-Saturn square, if I share my screen, this is all quite ad hoc. I'm not very good at planning videos because I find that the passion just kind of falls out of the bottom a bit. In my case, for other people, when they plan them, they look brilliant. In my case, I have to be a bit spontaneous, otherwise the excitement wanes. So just to give you a visual, so this is today. If I just take this back to yesterday, I'll animate this. So even though this transit is no longer exact, it's still very much in play and we can feel it. And usually with a transit, we are talking about an activation of being within 3 degrees of the exact transit degrees and minutes. So for example, the exact transit degrees and minutes here is Jupiter. Yesterday on the 15th of June was at 1 degree and 14 minutes of Cancer, and it was in a square aspect to Saturn, which was at 1 degree and 17. So at some point this square, if you're in Astrology Treehouse, which is my monthly membership, where we talk all things astrology, you'll recognize me going as I'm trying to get the exact degree and minute, because it's always just like, I've got to get it just right, just so I can show you, like, for all the number geeks out there like myself who like things to be exact. So here we are, Jupiter in Cancer at 1 degree and 17 minutes of Cancer, and Saturn in Aries at 1 degree and 17 minutes. So this was exact yesterday, kind of just after midday in the UK. So adjust for your time zone. And usually, I saw a great visual actually on the astrology podcast Instagram the other day of how we feel the intensity of a transit. So usually beforehand, so this would, in terms of how fast these 2 planets are moving, most of last week we would have been feeling the intensity of the energy that this transit is creating, kind of moving up a curve like this, moving up a mountain, and then it peaks. So at this point, yesterday on June the 15th, we were at the peak of the transit, so peak of that energy. So it could imply that we took action yesterday in reference to what we are trying to achieve from this longer term cycle. We'll get into the details of that a bit more in a minute. And then after the peak, it kind of moves down the mountain again. And so this is kind of like within the 3 degree range, we start to go up. So for example, when Jupiter first moved into Cancer, we definitely would have started to feel this energy. And Jupiter went into Cancer just not very long ago at all. It's still in Gemini a week ago. So we are talking, what day did that happen? Here we are. That was on the 10th of June. And then we will come back to, so Jupiter's been in Cancer for like 5 days. So really started to feel the intensity of this last week because of the sign shift of Jupiter, and also because, because of the degree-based aspect. So we potentially were feeling this when Jupiter was still in Gemini, but in ancient astrology, you don't really get these sort of aspects forming between signs next to each other. So if you're getting an ingress of something, you've got the ingress of a planet moving into a sign, like in this case Jupiter moving from Gemini into Cancer, then it's really when Jupiter moves into Cancer that you're going to start to feel that energy, because this exact aspect stay with me, this is getting a bit confusing, we'll get to the kind of what does it all mean in a minute, but this exact aspect it was forming in the sign of Cancer, not in the sign of Gemini. And they're very different energies, but Gemini is still part of this story. But if this transit had happened when Jupiter was at maybe 6 degrees of Cancer, then the 3-degree range would have been really recognizable in that example, because once we reach 3 degrees of Jupiter in Cancer, that's the engagement range. So between 3 degrees and 6 degrees, where the aspect is completing and exacting, reaching that peak in the mountain, that would have been much more noticeable, whereas this is kind of more blended in with the energy of Jupiter moving into Cancer in the first place, because it's happening in the very beginning of the sign. So it's really emphasizing those first kind of bounds and decans of Cancer, and it's also activating the first bounds and decans of Saturn as well of Aries, because that's where Saturn is. And so this energy tells a story. And whilst I've been doing readings lately, I've been sort of sharing with clients about how when this energy, and I'm going to take you back to some dates now, Jupiter was in Gemini and Saturn was in Pisces. Sorry, Gemini and Pisces. And that is that is an air sign. Gemini is an air sign up here, and Pisces is a water sign down here. But they form an aspect of a square to each other, which is a tense aspect, the energy of Mars, something initiating, but also bringing up a challenge and some need for kind of bravery and courageousness and extra energy to be put into something. So that's how we kind of work out what kind of what the aspect shape is kind of creating in a psychological lived experience. But also because they form a square to each other, that means that Pisces and Gemini are of the same modality. So they're both mutable energy. And the magic of mutable energy is that it brings in curiosity. It brings in a myriad of ideas, potentialities, trying on new things. And in Gemini, that's air sign. So it's like lots of different ideas, lots of conversations, lots of researching, lots of communications. It's like going into a library, checking out all the different rows, jumping on one of those ladders, climbing the bookshelves. I found one here, going down the ladder a bit. I found one here, and going down to the bottom, and I found one here. And now I'm going to start getting out my sticky notes, and I'm going to start picking out pages where maybe not chapters, because I feel like that's even a chapter is too long for a Gemini curiosity, but like a paragraph or even a sentence or like a bullet point list is going to jump out to me. So I'm just going to put a sticker on that page. And this is all what we've been doing up until this point, by the way. So we're not at this point now, but we have been at this point. And this point is still being a bit illuminated by the fact that the sun is in Gemini. So we do have some energy in Gemini in the sky still that takes us back to some of these dates I'm going to give you in a second. So we're gathering all these ideas. We've got all of our notes and everything. Pile of books, maybe a notebook, maybe a recording device, maybe we're making little videos about it, maybe we're having conversations with friends, meeting up with people. We're going to travel around our local neighborhood, look out for signs, omens, what's in the charity shop window, what conversation did I have with the coffee shop barista this morning, what did I buy in Tesco's, did I do something different, did I do it the same? And just being very curious, being dexterous as well, because Gemini rules the hands. So thinking about getting the hands involved in some way, perhaps, taking like a typing course, or just getting more agile at typing, to gather your data and kind of maybe store it and record it. So that could be part of the Jupiter in Pisces and the Jupiter in Gemini energy that we've been experiencing. And then the Pisces energy, which is where Saturn has been more about how am I setting boundaries, how am I coming up against blockages and barriers. So Jupiter, where it was in Gemini, was this very sort of expansive, bringing opportunities, bringing in a spiritual kind of connection to ideas, and bringing in this like, what's the greater meaning of it all kind of energy. Also meeting with teachers, higher education institutions, possibly information coming in from sources that are outside of our local neighborhood, perhaps further afield, but gathering that information perhaps through the internet as opposed to actually traveling abroad to gather that information. And then Saturn brings in the restrictions, it brings in, yes, the barriers, it brings in like the slow it down. Let's take this over a period of time. Let's not just jump into something. And in the sign of Pisces, that was very connected to things like spirituality, faith, philosophy, music, dance, creativity. It's very poetic. It's also very connected to empathy and how we feel empathy for other people. But perhaps if you are somebody who feels so much empathy, Saturn in Pisces over the last 2.5 to 3 years has kind of really taught you about where do I put my boundaries in. And depending on which house in your birth chart Pisces rules, for example, if it's the first house, the third house, sixth house, wherever, that will be the life area where you've been asked to put in some of these boundaries, to really understand yourself about how much can you give to somebody else. And this isn't in a physical way, although it can experience in a physical way if you have like a moon in Pisces, for example, or a Pisces rising, and perhaps your physical body will feel this energy, because the magic thing about Pisces is how much energy they can feel from other people and how much kind of healing and psychic connection they can have with other people. But often it is to the detriment of the physical body from that Pisces character. And they need to restore that Pisces energy. They need to restore some empathy to themselves, some psychic energy. Perhaps they need to reconnect with water on a regular basis to really kind of cleanse off other people's emotions, to really come back to the self, spending time alone, time in kind of silent reflection or reading or watching Netflix or something like that, that just gives that Pisces energy that little bit of coming back to self, because they're constantly giving. And I think Saturn in Pisces has been really useful for that one, in terms of learning how to do that and learning how to say no, as well as all the Aries energy, which has been really good for learning how to say no as well. So I'm just going to take you back. So this weekend, like I said, it was the peak of this mountain transit, right? And we first started to experience some of this energy, this interplay between Jupiter and Saturn, which is a very kind of long-term process. And we had the new moon moment of that. If we imagine the phases of the moon, that the new moon is where we initiate, we don't initiate, but we start to sort of just see, oh, I've got a new idea. Maybe I fancy sort of doing this thing or trying this thing, or maybe I fancy changing this area of my life. And then we reach the first quarter phase of that, where we start to really see some plans coming into fruition. We're really starting to try and put that into some sort of lived reality. Then we get the full moon moment, where we see the results of our labor. What have we tried? What haven't we tried? What's worked? What hasn't worked? And then we kind of start to really find our feet in that kind of disseminating and last quarter moon phase, and then we get back to the new moon phase again. So this is like a longer term cycle. So back in 2020, so we're talking 5 years ago now, we experienced the new moon moment of this phase. So maybe I should have started with that, because that's the juicy bit. So here we go, let's go back in the years. So this is June of 2020. We are looking for Jupiter, so that was actually in Aquarius when we had this moment. So let's, oh no, why does it do that? I didn't want it to do that. I wanted it to do this. Where are we? Okay. Where are you, Jupiter? There you are. Months. There we go. So Jupiter is in Aquarius. Gosh, I feel like I've said this a lot lately, but God, it moves so quickly sometimes, Jupiter, when it's really got a good speed on. So here we go. Let's go back a bit. Jupiter's still in Capricorn here on the 18th of December 2020. And then let's just get the exact day here that it went into Aquarius. Okay. So it went into Aquarius on the 20th of December 2020 and immediately made a conjunction with Saturn. So this is the new moon moment, if you like. Obviously, the moon and the sun aren't really involved in this particular transit, but this is the new moon moment of the conversation that Jupiter and Saturn like to have over kind of periods of time. So they're going to meet in the sky in a regular kind of organized fashion. You know, in regular, you know, periods of time, and then they're going to start to play out their new story within our own lives, and collectively as well in the in kind of mundane astrology, you know, global events and things like that. So this is the 20th of December. So think back to, and this is where I had an absolute mare because I was looking at my Google Calendar for December 2020, and I think I changed my email address since then because all of my calendar events were just deleted. There was nothing there, and I was like, what? Because that is like my go-to research point. But actually what I'm going to do later is I'm going to look through photos that I took back in 2020, and I'm going to start trying to kind of build up a bit of a timeline, what was going on, and it'll relate it to the house topics that that Aquarius bring up in my own birth chart. And then I'm going to start to do the same thing for the next parts of the process that we're going to get to in a minute. So anyway, this was the new moon moment, 0 degrees of Aquarius between Jupiter and Saturn. So look in your own birth chart, which house is Aquarius? Where did you have this new moon moment? And can you think back to what was significant in your life relating to that house area? So for example, if it was in your 11th house, it's community. If it's your 12th house, it's a subconscious. If it's your first house, it's very much about body and mind. Second house is personal resources and self-worth. Third house is living environment, local neighborhood and siblings. Fourth house is home, roots, family, ancestors. Fifth house is children, creativity and fun. Sixth house is daily routines and health and work. The 7th house is marriage, partnerships, close one-to-one connections. 8th house is other people's resources, debts and inheritances. Also the darker side of life, like sex, death, rebirth. 9th house is astrology, long distance travel, higher education, law, potentially, spirituality. And the 10th house is work, career and successes. It's a very public house. So see which whole sign house is Aquarius for you to see where this exact brand new beginning was taking place. I mean, you're just starting to seed this idea of something that connected to, I mean, the Aquarius energy is kind of like looking into the future, perhaps using technology in some way, thinking about people as a whole instead of as an individual, thinking about, collective energies. People is a big Aquarius topic. As well as inventiveness and trying to see what, like, you know, well ahead of where you are in the current time. Aquarius is really great at being able to kind of problem solve, 20 years ahead of the time, being able to see like, oh, this is a problem right now that can't be solved in this way right now, but perhaps in 20 years time it can be solved in this way. Very kind of forward thinking. So that's the 20th of December 2020. And obviously, because, or maybe not obviously, these two planets, fairly slow moving, particularly Saturn. Jupiter's a bit quicker. So we're going to be thinking about up to a couple of weeks either side of the 20th of December 2020. So really the whole of December 2020 and the first week of January 2021, what was taking place for you at that time that you can connect to this time. So we're starting in fixed air. So we've got some which is Aquarius, sorry, just to clarify, this new moon moment in fixed air. So feeling very solid about something, very committed to something, and like, I know that this is something that I really want. It's an idea because it's very cerebral, because it's Aquarius, but we're not thinking about how to manifest it at that particular point in time, which is the exciting reason why that's why it's exciting that we are where we are now, having just had this weekend, the 15th of June, because that is putting things into motion in a big way. So Then we want to go back to 2024 and around about the summer months. Let's go to July here. Yes, here we go. So we've got Jupiter in Gemini by this point, and we've got Saturn in Pisces. So can you see that these are, I haven't got the degrees exact yet. Let's see if we can, 5 and 19. No, we need to go forward a little bit. Oh, again, I'm doing it. 14, 16, 18, 17, 18. Right, by this point, Saturn's retrograde. Yeah, that's why it was so significant, this one, because Saturn was changing direction, so it's really holding the energy of this one. So this was back in August, sort of mid-August of 2024, but really the energy of this started to come in kind of late July, and to the end of August, beginning of September. So Jupiter's now in Gemini, this mutable air sign, so lots of ideas. Remember being in the library, gathering the books, putting the post-its down, perhaps typing up some notes, recording a voice note, gathering information, traveling around, going on your bicycle, looking at your local park, you know, what omens can I see, noting it down, gathering information. And it was squaring Saturn in Pisces. We're thinking about, how much am I giving too much of my energy away? Where do I really want to be putting my energy? Is my energy going to be, the thing about that Pisces energy of giving too much is that there is a way that Pisces energy can replenish. Like I said, reconnecting to water, cleansing, taking a shower, being near a river, going for a paddle in the sea, going for a swim in the sea safely, you know, whatever it is. But there's also a way of feeding some of that energy back to self, particularly like Pisces rising or sun or moon, you know, strong Pisces energy in the birth chart, then replenishing, like sending some of that energy back to yourself is really important. But it's tricky because the Pisces urge is just to blend with everybody else and not have to think about the self, because it's the final sign of the zodiac. It's the very end of the cycle. It's been here many times before, incarnated in this lifetime. It knows all of this energy, and it's just like, oh, I just want to reconnect to source. But actually, some of the magic of the strong Pisces in the birth chart in this lifetime is to really connect with the body and really sit with what is there to try and kind of heal some of whatever it is that's causing the discomfort of why the energy is all going out to other people as opposed to the self. So lots of self-healing going on here. And I think Saturn's been really useful for that in terms of trying to put some boundaries around the bottomless bucket of emotions that just likes to splash everywhere. Perhaps it has put a new bottom on the bucket, but perhaps there's still a few holes in there, so you are able to trickle out the empathy to other people, but also perhaps you know that once one bucket's worth of water has trickled out, that for the rest of that day you're not going to put any more water in the bucket, so there's no more left in the bucket and there's no more left to give out to other people. So it's almost like a neutralizing situation has occurred, and you can then go in for a new bucket for the next day. And you never know, by the next day, I've got this image now of like a kind of forest shower. So there's just like a kind of teepee frame made out of like logs standing up like this, and a bucket at the top, and you go and pull the string to have your bucket shower in the morning, and a nice al fresco shower, and perhaps overnight some pine cones and some leaves have fallen in the bucket, so actually those holes are even more covered up. So the next day Saturn has decided to put some boundaries in, which are the leaves and the pine cones, and there's less water able to get through the holes. So actually you're keeping your bucket fuller for longer and really channeling those drops of empathic water out to just specific people instead of everybody. And I think that's a really great lesson that we can take from Saturn in Pisces that is now finished up. So yeah, let's come back to I was going to say modern day, that's not right, the present day. Are we in the modern day? I don't know. I had a past life regression. It was amazing on Friday. And I feel like I'm living in like 50 different lifetimes right now. Oh, I just want to go back by days. Yeah, so just back to yesterday. Okay, so fast forward. Oh no, yes, when did I get it? Oh, I've done it again. I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to have to get it to the exact, because I just can't look at it and feel like I can explain clearly until it's all just sitting there. Right, 1 degree and 18, 1 degree and 18. There we go. So now we're at this first quarter moon. So back in 2020, kind of 4 or 5 years ago, we were at this brand new moon moment. Now we're at the first quarter moon, which means that we are able to really start to put into place what those ideas were that were coming up for us back in 2020, the conjunction in Aquarius. We're thinking about something for humanity, something connected to technology. And then to August of 2024, when the ideas were coming along, and the the lessons around giving out too much to other people. And again, like the Aquarius stuff, look to the whole sign houses of Cancer and Aries in your birth chart to see which 2 areas are being highlighted by this aspect or this transit. Again, it's a square aspect. So because of retrogrades, this is why we've had this aspect 3 times. So it's quite nice. It's almost like you get to try out the energy 3 times in a row. So actually between the summer, so August of 2024 to December of, did we do December? Did I miss that one? 1 second. I think I might have missed one. Let me just check. Sorry, because we had, yeah, it was August of 24. No, we did, didn't we? To December of, just gonna have to do it again. This is why you take notes, people. But I'm not here for the notes, I'm here for the passion. Yeah, there we go. That's right. So this was, that was it. It was the 20th of December, wasn't it? So yeah, something here around feeling really expansive about ideas, about communications of some kind, and also the restrictions coming in and the lessons and the maturity coming through around how much we're giving out to other people. Is that perhaps where my forest shower came in? That analogy might have been. Oh, okay. Right. So yeah, now here we are. And this is the first, so the first 2 squares of this aspect. So like I said, this aspect's happened 3 times over the last kind of just about year, 9 months, 9-10 months. And they were between Gemini and Pisces. And the first one, the second one, so the one back in August was Gemini Pisces. The one back in December was Gemini Pisces. Now we're at Cancer and Aries. I should say Aries and Cancer to keep it in not geographical order, but zodiac order. That's the one, zodiacal order. And I'm still recording, I hope so. Yes. And what I love about this is, obviously we'll get into the symbolism of the signs, Cancer and Aries, but more than anything, what I love is that we're at this first quarter point. We're really bringing something to light. We've got quarter of the moonlight now. So we are really, there's a lot of focus on this. It's not the full focus, which is where it'll be in the full moon phase, which will be about 4 years from now. So we're still building. But we've really got a strong idea of, oh, this is the direction that I want to go in. And because the, oh, bird's just flown right near my window, because the mutability of the Gemini and the Pisces was all ideas and curiosity, but not making anything solid, especially Pisces, you know, which we can't see, it's not visible, it's a water sign, so it's very much about the feeling of something. And then the air sign of Gemini, just it's ideas and sharing and talking, but it's not really putting stuff into action, it's just gathering information. And then we move into Cancer, which is a cardinal sign. And again, because Cancer is making a square aspect to Aries, this is making that Mars-ruled square aspect. Mars, that initiating, and also like, I need to put some energy into this thing. I need to be brave and courageous. That makes Aries also a cardinal sign, as is Capricorn another square away, and Libra another square away. But anyway, that's just sort of technical stuff. But yeah, what I love is that we've gone from this idea gathering in Gemini and Pisces and a feeling to the initiation. And Saturn at 1 degree of Aries is just like 0 degrees of Aries is the beginning of the zodiac. It's the beginning of life. It is the beginning of springtime. Everything is possible. I'm not going to think about long-term plans, although Saturn's there kind of going, you do need to think about long-term plans. You need to think about taking a mature approach. Aries just wants to jump in and get started, but Saturn's like, is it okay to do that? Are you being too rash? Are you being too passionate about this? Do you perhaps need to pare it back a bit, be prepared to perhaps be humbled, but also don't lose your passion entirely. You know, don't, there could be an ability here to kind of fall into a feeling of feeling a little bit like you've had the wind taken out of your sails, because if it was Jupiter in Aries, it would be like, I'm just going to do the thing, I'm just going to jump in, it's going to be great and amazing, and actually not think about the long-term consequences doesn't really bother me because it's Aries energy. But Saturn in Aries, it's known as being in its detriment, so no, being in its fall even. So that just means that Saturn in Aries, like they kind of, the archetypes of Saturn as a planet and the archetypes of Aries as a zodiac sign just aren't really on the same page. Aries is ruled by Mars. It just wants to initiate, it just wants to start, it wants to conceive something. And Saturn wants to be slow and steady and do things in a very cold way. It's a sort of cold energy, and it's like the time on the clock. Perhaps the world began at midnight and it's 1 minute past midnight, and Aries is like, I am ready to go. And Saturn is like, we are not going until we are at least 1/4 midnight or into the first quarter of this process. So there, I feel like the fallen Saturn, despite it being, you know, debilitated in some sense, because we are at the first quarter of this process, there is something extra Marsy about this, which means that the Marsy Aries energy might try and take over a little bit. And then the Jupiter in Cancer is like, very much like, I can bring fertility to whichever area of life I am touching. So whichever birth chart house Cancer is for you in your birth chart, that is getting a real kind of expansive, nourishing. I'm always getting this vision of like a smorgasbord since Jupiter's moved into Cancer. I'm always hungry. I always want to have food nearby. I want to have nice food. I want to have drinks. I want to have the stuff that I like. I want to feel comfortable. And I want to just kind of get a bit fat on it, you know, because Jupiter's expanding all the time, and I'm a Cancer rising, so that's how it's going in my head. And Jupiter in Cancer is such a balm to the soul after the long period of Mars in Cancer that we had, and the retrograde, and with Leo as well, that was just really attacking all these Cancerian parts of our lives, like sort of family, home life, children, yeah, all of those, you know, our relationships with our bodies, with our mothers, with caregivers, with grandparents, you know, the homestead, just family, those things that are usually soft and nourishing and nurturing. We're feeling fairly the opposite of that when Mars was in Cancer back in November of 24, and then really that whole process didn't really finish until March of 25. So now for Jupiter to be in Cancer, where it's exalted, and that means it's really lifted on high, and it is just Jupitering in a big way. Like I said, I've come on to do this video because of the passion, not because of my notes that I do not have. Actually, I can show you some notes. I have got Jupiter square Saturn written down. That is it. I'm more excited about the notebook that I've written it in. And I know that the passion is all kind of within me, and that's what I want to share with you. So there's this really initiating, exciting, cardinal energy that has been around this weekend that is bringing those ideas back from December of 2020, and then again last summer of 2024, and then Christmas Eve of 2024, where there was this real energy of like expansion and contraction, or perhaps this energy of like, right, I want to take this serious, mature adult approach to something, and maybe I feel like I've got the faith to begin that thing, because Jupiter's now in Cancer and it's very connected to faith, whereas when Jupiter was in Gemini, that was in detriment. So it's like, I'm not sure that I do have the faith. I think I still need to do research. And now Jupiter's in Cancer, and it's like, you do have the faith, and you just don't lose all passion for the thing that you have got the faith about, because it's quite easy to lose the passion when Saturn is in Aries. But the longer term view, as when Saturn, the long-term view being that Saturn is going to move through Aries over the next kind of 2.5 to 3 years, is that by the point that Saturn is where Chiron is now in Aries, 26 degrees, going to have learned a lot about how much is too much, how much is just the right amount, and that yes, it's okay to be passionate and excited about these ideas. I mean, also an interesting one to do, just to add in for some extra layers whilst you're tracking these own dates in your birth chart, is to think back to April of 2023 when we started having eclipses in the sign of Aries. I think at that time we also had Jupiter in Aries. Should we have a quick look? We could do, couldn't we? 23, Jupiter, where are you? Jupiter's in Taurus at this point. Okay. So Jupiter was in Aries. Yeah, 22, June of 22. So it stayed there until, oh no. Why does it do that? It suddenly slips and then you're like, oh no, I've lost it. Jupiter's, am I going the wrong way? 14. So it's just done a little retrograde there to throw me. I was at 15 Aries there. Oh, here we go. 15th of May 2023. So it was there in April of 2023. It was just finishing up. So April of 2022 to May of 23, Jupiter was in Aries. And that also, I mean, that is very a different energy to Saturn in Aries. That was Jupiter in Aries, and like, I'm just going to try the thing. I'm going to expand in this very passionate, excited, childlike springtime way, and I'm just going to go for it, and I'm going to have the faith that those things are going to work out. But now we switch forward to the current day, and yeah, now it's Saturn in Aries, which is a different vibe, but it doesn't mean to say that Saturn has to kill off all the enthusiasm, but it is making us be a little bit more like, let's try and spread the enthusiasm out a bit instead of just putting it all into one basket. Let's try and have some eggs in your basket over here and some eggs here and just a few here. What is that TV show? There's some TV show where you have to, like, you get given a wad of money and you have to like put it on the right answer, but then you can still like keep some more of the money and like place it one of the other answers, and then they'll like do a big light and you lose like £5,000, but then you still save two because you didn't put it all on one. So then you can still work with that 2,000 and try and win the rest of the game with that. So anyway, that's just a British TV show, but there must be other TV shows in other countries like that as well. So we are thinking, let me stop sharing my screen. I'm going to come back and just pound you with my image. You are presenting. Stop presenting. There we go. Yes. So this weekend has been a really interesting time. We also had a lot of energy going on between Mars and Uranus, which was particularly powerful. Really excellent for things like accidents, shocks and surprises, unexpected turns of events, possibly unexpected conflict as well that might have felt a little bit heavy. And I think the Jupiter-Saturn square is actually quite a nice energy. Yes, there is a fallen Saturn, but there is an exalted Jupiter. And I think also once Mars, which is ruling that Saturn in Aries, moves out of Leo, where it's been for so long, we can start to get some new perspective on this experience, because whilst this Jupiter-Saturn square is still engaged for the next kind of week or so, Mars is going to move into Virgo and it's ruling that Saturn in Aries. Sorry if that's a bit confusing, but it's just bringing in some extra archetypal energy for those of you that can that want to expand that bit more and not feel overwhelmed by it with my Jupiter in Cancer, like, rah! It's the enthusiasm. I don't have Jupiter in Cancer, but it's just the enthusiasm. Yeah. So when Mars moves into Virgo, that again is a mutable sign. So that actually might take us back to some of the Gemini Pisces energy that was back in the summer of 24 and December of 24. And it might bring new information to light to help get this thing started, like help strike the match. It might bring the matchbox to join the match, or it might bring, it might refill the matches that are empty once you open the box, and it might just give you that one match, but it will give you something like some new ideas, some new information that can really help initiate this thing that you're trying to get off the ground, that is now receiving a quarter of the light of the moon. So it's definitely visible. It's not in complete visibility, which it will be in about 4 years' time at the full moon part of this process, but we're at the first quarter moon. It's very exciting. It's very initiating. This is really your sign to kind of go for the thing, get it started, try and be a bit sensible about passions. Maybe you won't be able to go all out straight away, despite the fact you might want to and you feel like it's all going to work out and be okay, but don't allow Saturn in Aries to kind of take all of the wind out of your sails and make you feel like these dreams aren't possible. They are totally possible, but with a kind of slow, steady approach, as opposed to that energy of excitement where we really want to kind of get everything initiated straight away. So don't lose hope. This is an exciting time. And I feel like now that we're not in the mouth of the transit at the peak of that mountain that we saw on the Astrology Podcast Instagram image, that we actually can add some more of that Saturn energy in. Because when we're at the peak, we might just think that anything's possible. But as we're starting to move away from that peak of the transit over the next kind of week or so, and with Mars moving into Virgo, we can really start to sort of see where we're at in this process. We can have a check-in point with ourselves. Perhaps we wrote a 5-year plan back in 2020. Maybe we can go back to that and kind of check off some stuff off of the list. Perhaps you've achieved far more than you thought that you had. I think that is definitely true. I can definitely say that's true for me. And that we're now moving into this new phase. And just because the exact transit is going to move off in a week or so, it doesn't mean that we lose all of this energy. This is a much bigger process. Remember that we began this process back in 2020 and we're here now in 2025 and we're really bringing something to life. Thank you so much for joining me. If you would like a one-to-one reading, please book at the link in the description, and I'll see you again soon.